Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Influence Economy. I'm your host, Shayna Davis. Thank you so much for being here today. Before we get started, I would love if you would do me a favor. I know I'm already asking for something before we even get started, but this is a good one. So I want you to take a screenshot of wherever it is that you're listening to this episode. I want you to post that screenshot on your social media. Tag us here at Shayna Rattler Davis. And then I just want to hear your biggest takeaway from this episode or your biggest aha. And the reason why I do that, you've heard me say it before. I believe that women are seen but not paid well in many instances. And everybody just doesn't know where to start. And so the more times that these episodes are shared, the more that they can learn how to expose themselves to the shifts that are going to be required to own their influence. So thank you so much in advance for doing that. Well, this month we are talking about podcasting. This is the last episode of the series where I'm going to be talking about podcast hosting. And then next week, we have a phenomenal guest that's going to share how we can use podcast guesting to help build our empires. But today, we're taking the conversation to the next level. We're talking about how to scale your podcast into a full-fledged media empire. You know that I'm real big on teaching ambitious women how they can create multimedia empires with a podcast at the center. Because you've heard me say before, and if you haven't, here we go. If you have, it bears repeating that I believe that a podcast without a business model is just a hobby. I believe that you should have a ecosystem of partnerships and products and services built around your show because that's what's going to elevate your income and that's really what's going to give you return on investment for your visibility. I do believe that those scalable and predictable ways to create elevated and life-changing income around your show is the best way to do it. So back to this, talk about building an empire. And before you get to thinking that I'm like exaggerating the words empire, like let me be clear, I'm just not talking about cute growth. I'm talking about scaling into an engine of influence that builds your brand equity, that secures high level opportunities, and positions you as a category of one. So, if you're ready to stop treating your podcast like a side project and start building a media asset that commands partnerships, power, and profit, then you're going to want to buckle up because that's what we're sharing here today. And if you decide that you're okay with your podcast being a side project, if you're okay with it just being a side hustle or a passion project, that's fine too. I just believe that there are greater opportunities for your time. And so, yeah, that's why I'm here. So let's start right here. A podcast is not a podcast. And I know you're like, what the heck do you mean a podcast is not a podcast? A podcast is a platform if you build it right. And what I've noticed is, and I just got done talking to the founder of Podmatch just a couple of minutes ago. You're going to want to make sure you tune in and listen to his episode next week or go back and listen to it if it's sometime down the road. But most podcasters are out here producing weekly episodes like they're doing a favor, like for the algorithm gods. You don't have to do that as much over here in the podcasting world like you do in social media. Like they're chasing downloads, they're praying for sponsorships, they're waiting on Oprah to find them. But media empires, they don't wait, they position, they produce, and they profit. Scaling from podcast to media empire, it's going to require that you shift your way of thinking. And I think that there are three core mindset shifts that you need to take into consideration if you want to go from thinking about your podcast in a smaller way of playing versus a bigger way of playing that can really turn itself into a full-fledged empire, a full-fledged business that earns you 6 and 7, sometimes even 8 figures based on some things that I've seen people do. So write these down, these 3 core things. Number 1, you're going to want to shift your mindset from show to studio because you're not just hosting a show, you're running a content studio. And that can sound a little bit overwhelming, but we're not going to go into this today. But there are some different systems and processes that you can put in place that it's not as daunting as what it may sound. But what that means is that you're planning with intention. You're creating intellectual capital and you're driving strategic visibility across multiple channels. So that's number 1. Shift your mindset from show to studio. Mindset shift number 2 is from creator to CEO. This is not about creator hustle. This is about having the mindset and doing things like a real CEO, because it's not enough just to be talented behind this microphone. You need vision. You need infrastructure. You need leverage. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. And then number three, you have to shift your you have to shift your mindset from content to capital. Because every episode that you publish, it should either position you, profit you, or pave the way for a power play. I had an opportunity last week to really position my show to pave the way for a power play. I hope that I'm able to share that with you. But I'm going to say those again so that you can write those down. Every episode that you publish should either position you, profit you, or pave the way for a power play. And if it's not doing one of these three things, it's just content clutter. So let's break down this media empire concept brick by bit, brick by brick. Not sure why I'm struggling talking today. So you want an empire, then you need to create an ecosystem. So the podcast is like the crown jewel, but what surrounds it is what determines its value. So you have the podcast at the core, but it's what you can build around it. That's where the gold is. That's where the real value is. So step one, anchor your brand positioning. You have to have crystal clear brand positioning that your podcast reinforces. So that means that your show's not just about everything. It's about something iconic. There's something called the power of one. What is that one thing that your show is about? Now, there's 50, 60, 70, 100 different ways that you can approach that one thing. But what is that something? What is that one iconic thing that your show is about? That one signature perspective, one transformational promise, one irresistible point of view. So, for example, if your podcast is about leadership, then your empire might be about redefining modern leadership for women that are in C-suite, right? Like on stage, in media, in their jobs. I don't know. That's a brand. Like that's empire fuel. Step number two, layer in content assets. So repurpose your episodes strategically. And we hear repurposing a lot, but I don't necessarily think that many of us are repurposing in the best way. So here's different ways that you can think about repurposing. Weekly email features with story-driven takeaways. LinkedIn and Instagram content that distills your point of view. Reels, audiograms, and quote cards that spark conversation. A digital guide or a workshop that directly ties to an episode's theme. Because I think that most people, they repurpose like it's leftovers, right? Like you're just using the same thing over and over again and only changing it up slightly, but using it in the same medium. And you're not a cafeteria. Cafeterias sell leftovers in my kitchen because I actually love leftovers, but not when it comes to repurposing my content. Anyway, treat your content like it deserves a premium plate. And then step number three is to create signature series and cross-channel campaigns. So if you want to scale, you've got to think in campaigns, not just content. So for example, launch a 4-part mini series tied to a new offer. Pair that with a challenge, a lead magnet, or even a limited time membership. And that's how you can monetize your attention, not by guessing, but by designing intentional growth touch points. And one of the things that I've done starting in the month of April is that every month, all of my shows will be centered around a theme. Every month is a theme, and then I'll be doing solo episodes around that theme. I'll be doing guest episodes around that theme, and then you will start to see other mini series and other things around that theme in my newsletters, in my emails, on my social media in different ways. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about how you can turn your podcast into a deal driving asset. We'll be right back. Ready to turn your influence into income? Take the Influence Growth Assessment. In just minutes, you'll uncover the next steps to grow your visibility, attract bigger opportunities, and boost your profitability. Visit myinfluencestyle.com to take the assessment today. A new era of success is waiting. Let's make it yours. Ready tech issues today, but welcome back. So this month we're talking about podcasting. This is the last episode in this series of this theme that we're talking about podcasting from a hosting standpoint. And so in this episode we're talking about, because in previous episodes we've talked about how you can land contracts. I don't even remember what all of them were, but in this episode we're talking about how you can create an actual media empire out of your show. And we just got done sharing how you can really create a brand ecosystem around the podcast. Step one was anchoring your brand positioning. Step two was layering in your content assets. And step three was creating signature series and cross-channel campaigns. So now we want to talk about how you can actually turn your show into a deal driving asset. And here's where we stop playing cute and we start playing corporate, right? And I'll talk about this from a different standpoint than what I did in the previous weeks, because your podcast isn't just a marketing channel, it's a deal driver, or it should be. But it only works if you know how to position it. And I'm going to share some ways that you can do that. Number one way is a syndication strategy. So what do you do? How do you do that? Look for podcast networks, platforms, or newsletters that align with your audience, and you offer a win-win there. So you deliver high value content, they get sticky engagement. It's strategic syndication, not just visibility for visibility's sake, because you can be on a lot of people's show and a lot of people's network that their audience is not your audience, or there's not a ton of value there, and it's just going to be very difficult for you to leverage it that way. So really looking at how can you find a podcast network, a podcast platform, or a podcast newsletter that aligns with your audience, and then you deliver your high value content there. Step two, strategic guesting, right? So stop inviting random influencers who just want exposure to your show, right? Just because someone has notoriety doesn't mean they need to be your guest. Just because someone wants to be on your show, that does not mean that you should have them as a guest. So you need to start building a guest strategy that opens doors. That includes potential brand partners, corporate decision makers, high net worth collaborators, media producers, or journalists, because empire builders, they don't just ask like who would sound good. They ask who holds the keys to the next level, right? So as a podcast host, you get pitched all the time with guests that probably have great content. But if you're really wanting to use your show as a media empire, you've got to be a lot more strategic with who you have on your show as guests to make sure that they're going to be opening greater doors. So it's got to be a win for you also, not just a win for the guest and your audience. Number three, monetize through alignment and not ads. So forget chasing those $25 CPMs from random like mattress companies. Like align with corporate brands who are already investing in women's leadership, business growth, media visibility, thought leadership sponsorships, whatever your audience is. You've got to start thinking about pitching brand integrations, like not banner ads. Offer content packages with measurable ROI. Position your podcast as the go-to gateway into your audience and watch the game change. We've got to view hosting from a different lens than what most of us are accustomed to and what most podcast gurus are teaching you. Now, if you really want to start to scale, you need to start thinking like a media CEO. So that means here's some of the things that you need to have in place or that you need to consider. A content calendar aligned to revenue goals, not just topics that sound great. They've got to equal revenue. They've got to funnel into something else that you have planned. So you should have revenue calendar in your business, and then your content calendar should align with those revenue goals. I'm telling you, y'all, it makes your job as a business owner and a podcast host so much easier, because now everything in your business for this month or for this quarter, however you look at your revenue, is all going to have synergy. That means what you're talking about on your show is going to align to what your offers are, what you're talking about on your social media, in your newsletters, to your email, all the different places that you are. There's going to be so much more synergy because your content calendar is going to be aligned with your revenue goals. It looks like a VA or a podcast producer managing post production and uploads. And there's a lot of AI and a lot of systems out there now, like Cast Magic, that make those things very easy for you. And it also looks like a business manager or a strategist helping convert visibility into revenue, because media empires, they don't run on adrenaline and Canva. They run on systems, strategy, and scalability. And here's something that most people missed: ownership. You have to own your influence, own your RSS feed, own your email list, own your distribution. Empire builders don't give away the keys to the castle for a little traffic and vanity metrics. So use your show to build your list, lead your audience, and license your assets. So let's wrap this up, because I've gone a little bit longer than I normally do on my solo shows. Your podcast isn't just a show, it's a media property. In your voice, it's not just content, it's capital. And so if you're ready to turn that capital into contracts, cash flow, and a category defining brand, it's time to treat your podcast like the empire that it's meant to be. So I recommend that you go grab my Influence Economy Playbook to get your hands on the same frameworks that I use with the powerhouse clients that I know that are scaling their podcasts into 6 and 7 figure media machines. So you can get that at influenceeconomyplaybook.com. There's sophisticated strategies, there's a visibility checklist, and there's even a visibility calculator to make sure that you're actually turning your visibility into profitability. So until next time, keep building your influence, stacking your income, and scaling with purpose. Your empire is calling. You guys have a great day. I hope that this episode has blessed you and that you will go back and listen to previous and future episodes as well. Share, share, share. Have a great day. Bye-bye.